St. Patrick is speaking to me today. Here's why. You know, St. Patrick, he was the patron saint of Ireland. He was credited in the 5th century, late 400s, credited with the spread of Christianity and the spread of the gospel throughout the island of Ireland. And during that time, it's sometimes easy for us to forget. We think that he was Irish or green. You know, many of us are unaware that St. Patrick was actually not Irish. He was British. And he was a slave in Ireland for about 6 years until he escaped. And then in his home, sensed a call from God to return to the place of his enslavement, to the island that he was previously enslaved upon, to become a missionary, to spread the good news of God's liberating love through Jesus Christ. And there he did it with much success. But the success that he came to bring to the island of Ireland was because he took a message of God's love, the message of Jesus Christ, and he used the culture of Ireland and the culture of Celtic peoples to introduce the truths of Christ. See, the Celtic people for years and years had their own way of life. They were a unique people, and the Celts, they had a unique relationship with the earth and the physicality of the corporal world, the material world. They had a deep reverence and respect and a sense of mystical awe over earth and sky and rock and water and fire and wind, and they had a kind of relationship with the corporal world, the physical world, in similar ways to indigenous peoples of our own continent here. And Patrick knew that, maybe during his years of enslavement, which may at the same time go to serve as a bit of a sermon to us. Don't despise the years in which you are enslaved. Realize that God may be showing you something that one day will come to fruition as your own sense of calling and mission in the world. But he learned something about the people in which with which he now lived, and he began to introduce Christian truths through their understanding of the world. It's the Celts who talk to us about how on earth there are some places so beautiful, so gorgeous, so mystical that it's like a thin place, a place where it's so pretty that you don't know where earth stops and heaven begins. The earth is thin right there. But they also believed that even though the world was filled with great beauty, it's also filled with great dangers, toils, and snares, that there are evils all about us, and we must watch for those threats. And every day you wake up, you could be under some kind of attack, persecution, threats by powers and principles all around. And so one of the traditions of the Celtic people is what's known as the Kayim or the Kiyim, which means simply an encircling prayer of protection. This is what they would do. In the mornings, knowing that they lived in a world with all kinds of dangers, toils, and snares, they would physically, literally begin their day with an encircling prayer. They would hold their hand out and put their finger up, and then making a circle sunwise, in other words, clockwise, they would turn a complete circle all around them. And when they return to their beginning, they pray a prayer that inside this circle, within this sphere around me, is the presence of Christ. And none shall harm me. None can undo me. No threat can unravel me, because within the sphere of this proximity around me is the very tangible presence of the risen Christ. And yes, there are threats, and yes, I will be wounded, and yes, I may be scarred and carry with me the scar tissue of my wounding throughout life, but nothing can undo me, because within this circle, greater is he who is in me than he who is in the world. And when they would encircle themselves at the beginning of a day, they would pray, and there would be rhymes and limericks that they would somehow pray, that sense of protection around themselves before they go out into their day. One of the most popular prayers that was used over time in their Kayan was called the breastplate of St. Patrick. St. Patrick's breastplate is a prayer that incorporates cultural sensitivities with the truth of Christ. I want you to hear these words. The breastplate of St. Patrick. I arise today through the strength of heaven, light of the sun, radiance of the moon, splendor of fire, speed of lightning, swiftness of wind, depth of sea, stability of earth, firmness of rock. I arise today. Through God's strength to pilot me, God's might to uphold me, God's wisdom to guide me, God's eye to look before me, God's ear to hear me, God's word to speak for me, God's hand to guard me, God's way to lie before me, God's shield to protect me from the snares of devils, from temptation of vices, from everyone who shall wish me ill, afar and anear, alone and in a multitude. And then words that you in this room will recognize. Christ, go before me, or beside me. Christ be before me. Christ be behind me, King of my heart. Christ be within me. Christ be below me. Christ be above me, never to part. Christ on my right hand, Christ on my left hand, Christ all around me, shield in the strife. Christ in my sleeping, Christ in my sitting, Christ in my rising, light of my life. Christ be in all hearts thinking about me. Christ be in all tongues telling of me. Christ be the vision in eyes that see me, in ears that hear me. Christ ever be. Wow. Try starting your day with a prayer like that and see what can come and get you. Not a thing, because within this sphere, I have welcomed the presence and power of Christ. Is this what Paul meant when Paul said, clothe yourself with Christ? If I were to summarize St. Patrick's breastplate, no matter what you're facing this particular week or what you face when you arise in the morning, here's the message. He's in it with you. He's in it with you. And there is no greater truth to give us a sense of confidence and faith than the awareness of that truth. Do you know that the longer I live and the more I walk with Christ, the more I recognize that so much of faith is simply about awareness. You have never been absent from God's presence except in your imagination. Becoming aware every morning that you are encircled by the power and the love and the confidence of Christ makes all the difference. And there is no passage of Scripture that better articulates this than the 139th Psalm. And as I was preparing this message, it's as if God laid upon my heart the burden, just take them through this psalm. Walk with them. Pilot them through this psalm. Shepherd them through the awareness that rises up off the pages of this one particular song. It's my favorite, by the way. Don't tell anybody. But when I hear these words in Psalm 139, oh Lord, you have searched me and known me. You know when I sit down and when I rise up, you discern my thoughts from far away. You search out my path and my lying down and are acquainted with all my ways. Even before a word is on my tongue, oh Lord, you know it completely. Can we stop there for just a moment? Somebody has come into this gathering today and somebody is watching online either today or sometime this week, and you need to hear one thing. You are seen, by God. You have walked around with this fear that life has taught you that you are alone, that no one sees you, because maybe life has proven that to you. Maybe in your family or in school or in your class or maybe at work, you have learned through observed experience that you are invisible to some. Yeah, you are. All of us can become invisible, especially during seasons of great pain when all we want to do is say, can somebody see me? Hello. And yet, in a world that will tend to erase you, the temptation is to self-erase. Well, if nobody sees me, nobody can understand me, therefore I'll just self-erase. And the opening line of this psalm is from one who has experienced it himself. God sees you. Even before a word is on your tongue, he knows it completely before you have taken that thought that is developed in the cerebral cortex and you have sent the signals to your larynx to form the words to speak with your tongue. God has already known because God sees you. It might be that the only reason you came today is to hear that you are not invisible to God. In verse 5, we pick up, you hem me in behind and before, and you lay your hand upon me. You hem me in behind and before. Do you know, what I know for certain is that some of us in this life are most afraid of what has come behind us. And some of us are afraid of what lies ahead, and some are most vexed by what is behind us. Something that you have said and regret. Something that you have done and regret. Something that you have left unsaid, or something that you have left undone and regret. And no matter what you do, you wake up every day and somehow, as soon as you turn around, there it is again. And it chases you like a predator and you can't seem to escape it. Many of us experience the truth that what causes most fear in our guts is what is behind us. And there are others in this room who are not worried about what lies behind, not worried about what was done or undone, what was said or unsaid that was somehow haunting you from years past, from wounds that you sustained years ago. Some are most crippled by what lies ahead, what is in front of us. There is a decision that has to be made, and I'm not sure which direction to go. There's a conversation that I got to have, and I'm not sure I'm ready to have it. There's a change that I know has to happen, and I'm not ready to make that change just yet. And I don't know the outcome of what happens if I choose to make that change. And if I do, and I don't know the outcome, I can't live with that, so I'll just stay stuck. Some of us know what it's like to be paralyzed by the unknown of what lies ahead. And it's been said that our past is where regret lives, and our future is where fear lives. But the psalmist says, you hem me in behind and before. You lay your hand upon me. What kind of hand? A hand of protection against that which threatens you from behind. A hand of forgiveness over that which you regret from behind. A hand of protection over that which is ahead of you that you cannot control. A hand of love and grace and welcome and reassurance and love. A hand of guidance. Somebody here needs to hear me say, whatever is behind you and whatever is in front of you that is causing you to be paralyzed in your faith, He's in it with you. He's in it with you. And verse 6 continues with the good news. Such knowledge is too wonderful for me. Are you able sometimes to hear words from a pulpit or from Sunday school class or from someone who loves you? Are you able to sometimes hear news that is so good that may apply to everybody else, but it's too wonderful for me? You don't know what I've done. You don't know where I've been. You don't know who I am. It's too wonderful for me, he says. It's so high that I can't attain it. Where can I go from your spirit, or where can I flee from your presence? And then these words, if I ascend to heaven, you are there. If I make my bed in Sheol, the darkest, shadowy underworld, you are there. If I take the wings of the morning and settle at the furthest limits of the sea, even there your hand shall hold me, guide me, your right hand shall hold me fast. Have you ever been in a situation where you just want to run away from God? Where you're at a place where perhaps in your shame or in your fear or just in your anger, your rage over the way things are unfolding in your life, you just want to get away from God, because you know if you're in the company of God, if you're in the presence of God, then God is going to require something in you that changes, or something that has to be let go of, and you just want to run from it. The psalmist says, I know, but no matter where I run, where can I flee from your presence? I'm trying to get away from you, but I can't shake you. Do you know that no matter how far and how hard you run from God, you can't shake him? Because God is crazy about you, and there's nothing you can do about it. Maybe today you have been one who has been crippled by some kind of fear or anger or some experience that is keeping you from sensing God's nearness. And maybe you are the one who needed to hear that no matter what is in front of you or behind you or to your right or left, no matter what storms are brewing above you or how bottomless the darkness may seem below you, he's in it with you. And all that he is asking for you to do is yield yourself, to open your mind and heart and receive him.